Oxytocin is a peptide hormone released in mammals. So we can feel it, but so can your cats and dogs and mice. And it's this lovely, built in, feel good wellness hack that I'm a believer in evolution. So the biology of our evolution as mammals included this really smart hormone, which releases when we feel safe, releases when people with breasts breastfeed, it releases when people are making love, but it also releases with a good, safe, long, loving hug or holding hands or physical contact.
Welcome to the Give and Consent podcast. The goal of this show is to introduce you to the people and ideas behind sex positivity, which is key to creating consent culture. Today, I am joined by a culture shifter and media personality. Her mission is to shift our culture to be a more compassionate world by helping people navigate challenging conversations. She is an intimacy coordinator, she's in TV and film, she's a speaker on consent and sex positive education, she's a corporate trainer, and the founder of Cuddle Sanctuary. Please welcome Cuddle Queen Jean.
Oh, thank you so much for that introduction. That felt really nice. And
Yeah,
I feel very welcome.
yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to have you. You're one of the first people I had on my list of guests that I wanted to have on the show because Cuddle Sanctuary for me was a really eye-opening experience. And every time I talk about it, it is a little bit of a point of confusion
Ah,
because, like, the idea of just getting together with people for platonic touch
yeah.
is very taboo in our culture. And I think it's also really important because, like, for me, it taught me the difference between seeking gratification in an interaction versus seeking pleasure. So let's talk a little bit about like that pre-pandemic place that is Cuddle Sanctuary and what that's all about.
Thank you. And I'm so grateful that you have tried Cuddle Sanctuary out, can speak about it from a perspective of having experienced it, because those of us who consider it and those of us who've been actually through the experience have such different stories to tell. So I'm Jean Franzblau, and I'm the founder of Cuddle Sanctuary. And my mission is to help people get more connection and affection into their day-to-day lives with hugs and possibly with cuddling, with consent. And so along the way, it becomes necessary to talk about and to teach the skills of consent so that people have sort of the words and the techniques and tools and tricks to navigate conversations relating to touch. I love what you said about like teasing out the difference between different kinds of pleasure or different kinds of gratification, I'm really passionate about creating a vocabulary where we can figure out what is it that we're needing and wanting, and can we actually talk about it? Can we actually ask for it instead of trying to get the needs met in indirect ways that can create confusion and even trauma, when two people or when people are actually thinking and wanting different things, there can be a great amount of confusion. So Cuddle Sanctuary pre-pandemic offered weekly events called Cuddle Sanctuary Socials, along with one-on-one professional cuddling services. So these are platonic touch experiences between a practitioner who has studied with Cuddle Sanctuary and a client who is seeking comfort, kindness, compassion, care, all in the realm of sort of a um, non-sexual environment. So there's so many different environments, and one of them is sexual and sexual and erotic. It's sort of other stuff besides that part of the pie. There's so much other stuff to explore, and also training, and now more online services, uh, products and things that people can get into this work or explore this stuff and not necessarily need to be in Los Angeles or where professional cuddlers trained by Cuddle Sanctuary live. We're trying to help more people get these messages. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I love that work. So like in the realm of like professional cuddling, what is the difference between professional cuddling and like just going and cuddling with your person that you're with?
Such a great question. I wholeheartedly encourage people to have cuddle buddies beloveds, friends, family members with whom they can hug, with whom they can hold hands, with whom they can have coffee with and put their arm around. I love all of that. And I'll speak for myself first. It's really handy to have a person who's trained to listen, who's trained in body dynamics, cuddle positions, and trained um, in trauma awareness, so that I might be able to spend some quality time just focusing on me and my own self-care. Because when I'm with a friend, there's a lot of reciprocity of give and take. And sometimes I just want it to be all about me because I'm depleted, or because I'm really, really sad, or because of a lot of different reasons. Maybe I'm not in my regular town near the people I love, and I really want some physical connection and don't want to hook up. I just want connection. So there's many different sort of pockets in the culture where professional cuddling can fit. I certainly don't want to take away that if I'm sad, I can certainly call a friend, yes. But when I was grieving the loss of my father, and I went to a professional cuddler whom I had trained, so I really knew he was wonderful, Jay in Florida, I just got to cry. I got to relax into an environment where my wellness was top priority for a full hour. And I could just relax my vigilance. I could relax my concern about how is he doing? He's trained to take care of himself. I can relax knowing that, I don't have to take care of anyone else. And for those of you who might be caregivers, you might understand the value of being with a professional who's going to take good care of their own needs, so that, we can just focus on our own stuff. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's also something really beautiful that happens when you're able to open up like that and take what you need and know that you're not overtaking. And then it creates this healing environment because there's a safety in it. And a part of that healing, I think, also comes down to the consent training that is part of the socials and part of what you're working with a coach. Like we talk about like the ask and wait rule, where you're asking before you're jumping in and trying to touch somebody. And that can be really healing for people with trauma. Like, what kind of healing and effects come out of people who actually attempt professional cuddling or going to these socials?
Well, one thing I always recommend is that sometimes people who are on a healing path get so ambitious that they want to leap over their own healing and go straight to being the professional. So I always would suggest, if one is working with trauma, perhaps begin with your own process of growth, your own process of healing, to prepare you and also to resource you so that you're ready to provide services to others. Having said all of that, what I have noticed in myself and in people who come to events is that we slow touch down. In our culture, there's this lesson that we're given, which is that we should use body language, and sometimes we should just sort of launch in there and just take a risk with touch. By, let's say, in a sexual situation, just kiss the person, take that first move, be bold. And for those of us with trauma, that can be really frightening, disturbing, re-traumatizing, not good for us. And so at Cuddle Sanctuary, we slow it down, meaning we teach techniques like the no thank you exercise, emboldening everyone to have the words no thank you to any offer of touch, and also to practice receiving a no thank you to requests for touch. That's, both of those skills are really important. But also the ask and wait method, which is required at our social events, which is, if I want to touch somebody, I ask and then I wait. I just wait for them to take a moment to check in with themselves, to determine if that's the touch that they're wanting, or maybe if they have another idea of something that might fit better. So it becomes a conversation. And so this is so rare in our culture. I think I could create an entire career on just the ask and wait method, or an entire movement on the ask and wait method, but there is a lot more to it. But what I'm finding is I'm learning to trust. I'm learning that I had more trauma than I realized. And I have a partner who's helped me to work through it by slowing touch down. I was noticing myself pushing myself past my own boundaries because I didn't want to be wounded, you know what I mean? Or I didn't want to have to deal with stuff. So let's just sort of fake it a little bit. And that means I'm faking my own, like I'm just pretending, when really I would prefer to be relaxed and embodied and feel truly and utterly safe. So I'm sort of mixing in my own personal journey and then the journey with Cuddle Sanctuary, but they have a lot in common, as you're hearing.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, the healing journey and the teaching journey and the self-care journey all kind of nicely stack on top of each other. And I like too what you said in there is like if someone's offering you a touch and you stop and check in with yourself first, and then you can ask for things to be changed, is a lot of us are not good at knowing like what kind of touch we actually want. And this is like a safe space to actually start learning the language for that.
Yeah, in fact, it's really common for people who come to our events to have no idea what they enjoy, which makes the recommendation and the guideline that you can change your mind at any time really important, because you might be curious about a kind of touch, try it, and then like 5 seconds later be like, oh, I don't like this. And so we don't want anyone to ever feel trapped or stuck, sort of socially awkwardly stuck, like I'm spooning somebody. I don't want to be spooning. Now what do I do? Instead, we give you language like, thank you for trying this with me, as you separate yourself from any kind of touch you're not wanting, or I feel full, or I thought I would like this, but it's not quite right for me. I'm going to take a break and sort of reassess, because it's absolutely welcome to be curious and to be on the learning journey around touch. So that kind of thing is so much a part of the culture of these events. The etiquette is to be, oh, good for you. Thank you for telling me. I'm so glad you're taking care of yourself. Like
Mm-hmm.
that. And you might remember that there's a solo salon, which is a quiet
Oh,
place. You
yes.
can just sort of take a break from it all and get a sense of what's next. Maybe I want to stay in the solo salon. Maybe I see somebody I'd like to ask for cuddling. Maybe I want to get a snack.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I want to be by myself for a little while. So lots of options.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love the solo salon also because it was like you don't have to leave, but you can stop participating for a minute and just kind of ground yourself or whatever it is that you need. It's super
Some,
helpful.
some people have stayed in the solo salon the entire event. And when it happened, I was like, oh no, does that person know they're allowed to leave the solo salon? And also, I'm not supposed to approach them. It's my own guideline. Like somebody's solo salon, assume they're fine, you know,
Mm-hmm.
bless them, not spiritually, but, like honor that they're taking some solo time. And that individual at the closing circle said, thank you for showing me what consent looks like. And came back and stayed in the solo salon again a few times. And then what they would do is, somebody overcoming trauma, is they would go off of the solo salon for a few minutes and then go back to the solo salon to like, just like a kid coming around from their mom's skirts. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm testing out what the world is like and then going back to where it's safe. And this person is self-regulating their sense of safety. And that is a very empowering thing for a person to do. But I don't want everyone listening to assume that everyone is dealing with trauma, that this event is solely about trauma. It's just that the structure of it provides safety for those who might have need a more careful approach to the event. There's plenty of other stuff going on as well, including laughs, including silliness, including including connection and conversation and things like that.
I think the massage train is one of my favorites that happens at Cuddle Sanctuary when they kind of like lay out some like let's just go for it, let's have some ideas, and then the massage train happens. I like to be at the end of the massage train though.
That's right. The end of wait a minute. Are you saying you like to be the front or the back of the massage?
The front.
Okay. My favorite position as well, because I'm part of a community, but I'm just receiving and I'm
Mm-hmm.
taking a break from any kind of giving. So folks are wondering, what is a massage train? Maybe you can picture one person seated in front of another and three of another in front of another. And we've actually renamed it before the pandemic. One person called it the sensation station. And the reason why is that not everybody wants touch, but maybe they still want to participate in that sort of row. And so a person could say, hey, I don't want you to touch me. Would you put your hand like a couple inches away from me and like send me some good vibes, whatever that means to you. So even that can be a way to participate with no touch at all. And I think that's an important thing to let folks know. that in a professional cuddling session or a cuddle event that has, good boundaries that I would want to attend, that there always needs to be a guideline that there's no touch required at any time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so helpful, especially when you're in a space where you're being encouraged to say no to things that you don't want, to have that knowledge that there is like a hell no, and that's going to be totally respected and even celebrated. So
Yeah, yeah, celebrated for sure. Because in the day-to-day default world, people are engaging in unwanted touch, and it's so common, it's benign, which is the unwanted hug, like, oh, I haven't seen you in so long, and the voices get really high sometimes. This is I'm sort of stereotyping how how me as a woman might be, seeing someone, it's like, hi, oh, I guess we have to hug now, when neither of us are wanting it, but because it's like socially sort of an expected thing. I would love to do away with all of that, the false gaiety, um, but also unwanted hugs, because they're such empty moments, and I so prefer to ask, to wait, and to actually know that this person actually wants a hug. Well, then I can just really breathe and give them the gift of a hug, or receive the gift of their hug, and really have a moment.
yeah, yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and of course, everything is different now.
Yeah.
You actually, Cuddle Sanctuary is like your business. You're an entrepreneur. What has the last year been like? Because cuddle parties are definitely not on the table in pandemic times.
For sure. Well, I'm really proud to say that my colleagues and I across the Cuddleverse have pivoted really well. One way is that many of us learn the skill set of providing soothing, kind, and compassion experiences virtually. At first, it was a bit of a paradox, or para something, to call them virtual cuddle sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the word paradox is the right word. Oxymoron maybe is the right word.
Yeah,
So now, maybe the better phrase is a virtual connection session. But there was so much that we can do virtually, including gorgeous eye contact, which can be so, like, with quiet and eye contact, there was so much that we can feel in being present with somebody who might be across the world. Besides that, I created a class called Find a COVID Safe Cuddle Buddy, because in the beginning of the pandemic, I was kind of quiet about the fact that, I live alone, and I was not about to begin a lifestyle of complete and utter physical isolation. Instead, I come from a medical family. My dad was a pediatrician. My mom is a retired nurse. I was paying very close attention to what I understood about the evolving science of what COVID was as an airborne virus, etc. And so I made a covenant with my cuddle buddies, with two people who were in separate households, about how we would act, what our commitments would be to each other in terms of masking, in terms of our isolating ourselves from the general public, in terms of how we are when we go to the store, in terms of how often we go to the store, in terms of how we're interacting with family, in terms of, so you get the idea. We know all of the drills. But from the start, I was not missing touch, because I was continuing to cuddle privately with the people in my pandemic bubble. And I thought it was a bit scandalous to say I am not isolating myself for my own mental health and emotional wellness. That's not a good choice for me. I mean, talk about an immunity dump, would be to put myself in a state where I would be depressed. A lot, sadly, there has been a spike in depression. There's a spike in self-harm, and in this isolation. And so I created a class, and put it out there in the world, so that people could expand their their quarantine, as safely as possible, or in a way that's risk aware. So that's another offering. I created a channel called Cuddle Queen Jean, as a way to connect with people weekly, to provide tools, that help me, or to show some cuddling, in hopes that, because I kind of am imagining that one day there might be a cuddle channel.
Mm.
Just as somebody once tried to create a puppy channel, that whenever you go to that channel, that cable channel back in the day, it'd be all puppies all the time. And there are things like that out there. Um, but I was imagining that people just watching the kindness of one person caressing another person's face, or the kindness of watching somebody braid somebody else's hair, that love and that oxytocin boost could actually be transmitted by watching. So that was an experiment that I continue to do right now as the pandemic is hopefully wrapping up. But I'm really grateful for the ingenuity required to see what solutions we could figure out together.
Yeah, that's really great work, and I love that. I love the dance breaks also that y'all have where everyone's dancing together, because that creates some great energy also.
Yeah, I want to give props to Faye Wyatt at faywyatt.com, who has her beautiful and emerging cuddle therapy and um, relational coaching practice, because it was Faye's idea to dance for 15 minutes every day, a 15-minute offering, which she continues to do. And they're nearing, I believe, the 300-day mark. And I am not talking about weekends off. I'm not talking about Christmas off. I'm talking about every day. And I have been a substitute at times, and a substitute dance, facilitator. And she's still doing it. And so if you want to find out more, you can find Faye and join in.
Awesome.
Mhm.
You mentioned this a minute ago. You just mentioned oxytocin, and what I'd like to talk about is like what is actually going on in the brain when you're actually like skin to skin touching people,
Yeah.
and what are we missing in that kind of like we're just connecting over Zoom to get the connection?
Well, oxytocin is a peptide hormone released in mammals. So we can feel it, but so can your cats and dogs and mice. And it's this lovely built-in feel-good wellness hack that I'm a believer in evolution. So the biology of our evolution as mammals included this really smart hormone, which releases when we feel safe, releases when people with breasts breastfeed, it releases when people are making love, but it also releases with a good, safe, long, loving hug or holding hands or physical contact. So I consider oxytocin sort of the bread and butter. It's like, bring me your body, and hopefully, with safety practices, we might be able to get that boost in your own body, because it's like a trigger. It gets released, not all the time. It gets released in the certain circumstances when we're receiving these different kinds of touch or these different activities. So I always want to give a caveat, because some people listening might be like, why do I never feel good when I'm getting a hug? And there could be a lot of reasons relating to your sense of safety. But some people who have had trauma or sustained trauma, actually their oxytocin release mechanism can be impacted by that. There's a physiological difference in some bodies. So please understand, it might be related to trauma, that you might not feel that feel good that everyone's talking about. So I just wanted to give you that heads up. But for many of us, it feels like relaxation, trust, connection, and a loving vibe. Some people have called it blissful. Isn't that cool? And that's why, people have joked with me, people who don't know oxytocin will make a mistake and think that I'm saying OxyContin, the pharmaceutical, which is so, which is in the news a lot. But I want to say that they have something in common, which is feel good. But one can be addictive, from what I understand. And oxytocin is a absolutely wonderful feel good hormone to want more of in your life. Similar, of course, I always think that things in moderation are good. So eating well can make one feel good, but we become obsessed with it and it becomes stressful. Same thing with exercise. It boosts endorphins, another feel good hormone. But again, it can be taken to exercise bulimia. So similarly, I recommend what I call ODO, optimum daily oxytocin. One can get oxytocin from looking into the eyes of a dog. And many people, many pet enthusiasts say that they do get their feel good when they're loving on their cat, when they're loving their snake, when they're looking, at their fish. So the only reason I mention the dog is because there's an actual study related to eye contact with a canine. And I try to stick with the science because goodness, cuddling is considered so weird in so many circles that it's good to keep grounding it in science. But I do want to tell you that I put one of my virtual connection sessions on YouTube, and because as proof that a person can actually feel some really deep feel good through the virtual. It depends on what happens. Like, in other words, it depends on the practitioner. Depends on the client's willingness to maybe try different stuff. But we can get there and create some real deep feel good even through this screen. Please, 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 please don't translate that to mean that I think we should eliminate touch or that we should have robots hugging us for the future. That's not something I'm super into. I'm a big fan of human contact and human connection. But I did discover some surprising truths that there's some feel good that can happen virtually if need be.
That's so interesting. I love knowing all of that because it's just, I think it's all about making sure that you have optimized what you need for the day. Like having a healthy diet to make sure your serotonin is good and taking care of yourself in that way. Yeah.
You had asked about what goes on in the brain and stuff, and there's some
Yes.
like wellness benefits that I didn't mention. Would you like for me to mention them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So what's great is that even though there might not be detailed studies on cuddling specifically, there's plenty of research out there about touch, and cuddling is touch. So there's not too many leaps I need to make about the benefits of oxytocin, for example, what gets released with safe touch. So some of those benefits include a better night's rest, so a deeper sleep, decreased cardiovascular disease. So it literally boosts the health of the heart, boost the immune system. So that's a kind of an interesting one when you talk about the pandemic and wanting to boost your immune system, and the fact that soothing touch with a safe partner helps to do so. And yet it's an interesting, debatable thing. And then another one is, decrease in the stress hormone. So I'm trying to remember what it is.
Is that cortisol?
That's exactly right. A decrease in cortisol. Thank you so much. It wasn't at the tip of my tongue. So for those of us who care about our health, the idea that you can sort of lay around a little bit and give yourself that health boost, I feel like it really satisfies those of us who love being productive, or those of us who love the latest health hack. This one's like super easy as long as you have that partner, some kind of safe cuddle buddy, which we can talk about more if you'd like.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I want to talk about next is like find that safe cuddle buddy. And then on top of it, as we're coming out of this pandemic, like, is there a crash and burn to like getting too much contact, or how do we do that?
Well, this is a great point. When a person has been isolated for a long time and then they get drenched in a beautiful event where they're getting oxytocin boost, there is something that we in the cuddle community called oxytocin drop. I wrote a blog about it. And some people are creating good graphics about how to do self-care, because it can feel like bliss. And then maybe like the next day it evolves into feeling really sad. And so my recommendation is basically, I consider it like a gas tank that's empty. It's just like, it feels like a crash into sort of an emptiness. My recommendation is to keep getting your oxytocin levels up and up and up. So it just becomes a daily goodness. When I first started cuddling as a client, going to events, this is what I observed: bliss and then crash. I had to almost plan for it. Then when my life became steeped in the world of cuddling, because I cuddle my partner, I cuddle clients, I cuddle at events, when it became just my day-to-day life, I did not get those drops anymore.
Yeah.
I should mention, that I used to deal with a lot of depression. and that also evened out.
Mm.
I think there might be a connection for many folks that they just might realize that they're missing. I'm using it not scientifically, but the vitamin T, touch, that could be a piece that's missing in one's day-to-day life that deserves to be planned for, similar to how some people plan their groceries for the week or their exercise or their social connections.
Yeah, that reminds me also of like if you are somebody who has lots of energy highs and lows, they call it more. It's about self regulation, and there's also this idea of co regulation, where if you're with other people, it helps you stay level because that's really the name of the game at the end of the day. That you're not crashing all of the time.
Yeah, the co-regulation, we talk about that as a service that professional cuddlers are providing.
Mm.
That if there is somebody who is calm, grounded, deep breath, like in a really good, smooth sort of emotional state, that person can take a client who's agitated and simply with their physical presence, which might include holding and breathing, just being in the presence of somebody who's chill can help you get more chill. Maybe that's why, I mean, it's not a cult, I promise, but I think it just occurred to me for the first time that maybe that's why people seek a guru,
Mm.
and why people will, sit at the feet of a master, of somebody who, who they consider has reached some kind of human mastery, is because that person's like really chill. And maybe that chillness or maybe that good vibe is contagious in a good way. Anyway, I don't want to take it to I took it to the world of cultishness, but it certainly can be a way in which that you choose a good practitioner is when you feel good around. It's also a good way to sort of think about how you think about friends. So it can translate.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I definitely seek that out in people and to know that they're capable of self soothing and self regulation and aware of it when they've gone off the rails. Like, I do a lot of yoga, and I know that does a lot to keep like my nervous system in check and helps me a lot because I'm an anxious person. It helps a lot with that.
Thank you for acknowledging that. I also deal with day-to-day anxiety, and yoga helps me plenty.
Hmm.
So we're like-minded in that way. Breath, yoga, good people,
Yeah.
inputs of positive things, um, habits that help me feel good are good self-generating. Like I feel good, and then I want to keep doing the habit because I feel good, and then I do the habit kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So in coming out of this pandemic and coming back into the point where we can have that physical contact again, what is that going to look like for Cuddle Sanctuary and for just our society?
The question is so good right now, where if you look at the date of this video, some of the countries vaccinated, some of the countries resisting a vaccine. People are wanting to come together. There's some places in which the COVID is starting to boost because people have had enough of being apart from each other, or missing each other, etc. So what is that? How do we ethically put on events where cuddling is welcome? And that's like the whole point. One thing I'm doing is there's the science that I need to honor. There's the health authorities in my region who will have uh, their requirements. But then there's the psychology of we as event leaders, my team, and the people who are interested in coming to events. So what I first did, so in other words, this is gonna be a complex mathematic,
Okay.
which is the science and the requirements, and then the ethics of exclusion or the ethics of inclusion. People who lead cuddle events, my team, folks who do this work out in the world, like my colleagues at Cuddle Party, my colleagues at Cuddlist, care deeply about inclusiveness. It's why you'll see that, we include in our code of ethics that we serve uh, all races, all nationalities, all gender identities, etc. It's like it's built into our DNA to be inclusive. So are we going to exclude people who can't get the vaccine because they're allergic to it? Are we going to exclude people who can't wear a mask because they've had trauma around. I've heard about somebody recently who had trauma around a terrible suffocation trauma in their childhood. They cannot wear a mask or they'll go into a state of panic. Are they excluded? So there's so many different reasons why. How about the Black community, who has every reason to have concerns and worries about the medical establishment and that community's reticence and worry about getting vaccinated and trusting its safety. Anyway, I think you can probably tell that there's a lot to think about. So I created a survey, which my team has taken to find out where is their sense of safety and ethics relating to these questions. And then over 80 people have, it's probably over 90 by now, have responded as guests or potential guests of these events to share their 2 cents about what they would expect, what they would require, what they would need. And it's not everyone has the same opinion.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to have these events, I have to be willing to please some, not please others. And maybe hope that there's a period of time, we are targeting July. But what are my rules going to be? That's still in development. But what I just did today is I sent a note to the team and I said, can we have a meeting next week? Here are some questions. Are you, as a public cuddle event leader, willing to share your vaccine status publicly? That's something I feel would be my responsibility, but will everyone agree? We'll find out. If you disagree, if you think that, having vaccine only events, prove a vaccine is if you disagree with that, are you willing to do an event like that anyway? Even if it's against your grain? Or is that a line in the sand that you will, like, maybe some people are like, we just have to trust people. I don't want people to have to show documentation. I'm just explaining, like, people have different opinions. You can kind of tell that I'm hearing lots of them. And I care. It's my job to care and not be dogmatic. So what I have done is I updated our code of ethics and requested that, like, everybody who's certified with Cuddle Sanctuary as a professional cuddler and everybody who leads events re-sign it with new language about public health. And it's language that says, I will obey the health authorities in my region and I will keep apprised of changes in my region and make changes accordingly. Because is this our first pandemic and only pandemic of our lifetime? I hope so. Variants might change stuff. Might we need to shut down our events for a period of time? Maybe. We've all had lots of stops and goes and heard about restaurants like, we're on, we're off, now we're shut down. So keeping lean in terms of as a business is important. Everybody else has income coming from other places along with me. And I think that's smart. It's still an emerging wellness modality. People still don't know about it. So, in our professional training, we say with love, don't quit your day job yet, even before the pandemic, because it can take years to develop a practice, because it's your job to educate everybody about what it is and what it isn't. And there's confusion about it being sex work, or there's confusion about our social events, sort of wink, wink. It starts off one way, but bow, bow, bow. By the end, it's something else, which is not, the case. But there's confusion about it, and their education is a big part. So the education continues, right?
Yeah, and I love that also, like, in talking to those that you serve, because it creates a sense of consensus and community and ownership and respect for everyone's level of consent walking in the door to know that the rules that they set are 100% followed, or there's reasons why it had to be changed.
Yeah, that's a great point, is that some people might not like my decisions. But at least they will know that they were heard, they were deliberated, that I care. I'm like, if I lean towards the more strict version of things, My plan is to begin offering the Find a COVID Safe Cuddle Buddy class for free, so that those who are dying, like really wanting a cuddle event, maybe they can gather folks that they feel safe with and have their own, events. I'm also creating an online class to teach people the secret sauce of how these events run, so they can run their own events in their own cities.
That's a beautiful thing.
I'm excited about it.
Before I ask you, I can imagine. So, before I ask my last question,
Yeah.
where can people find you if they want to find out more about this?
Thank you so much. Go to cuddlesanctuary.com or find us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, Cuddle Sanctuary. Same thing goes for YouTube. The show is called Cuddle Queen Jean, but the channel is called Cuddle Sanctuary. So that's all you need to remember. We're in all of the places, and thank you. And there's some free stuff on the website, and obviously the videos are free. So I hope you'll partake in any way that serves you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my last question, I've been asking a lot about what to do as we're coming out of this pandemic, and that's what I want to ask you about too. Basically, what's one thing that our viewers and listeners can do to actually bring more of this positivity into their life, like increasing oxytocin and getting more of that intimacy?
Well, one thing you can do is you can point to like the blogs that are out there about cuddling, or you find a video on YouTube or something, and you can use that as a conversation starter with those in your life who you might like to cuddle, or maybe at least have more holding hands, or maybe sharing more hugs. You can just use that as a starting point for conversation. We've already done the hard work of writing these things or making these videos. And so just be like, what do you think? So starting conversations is a good idea. Another idea is to just think about all the people in your life who might be open to holding hands a little bit more, or, painting nails with each other, or giving each other a foot rub. In other words, expanding the repertoire of activities that you do with the people in your life that might include more sweet, kind touch. So I created a video on that very thing. Like, here's some cuddle things you can try. Here's some activities. Here's some positions. Here's some childlike things you might want to return to. So I'm just trying to brainstorm as much as I can to give you all the conversation starters. It takes courage. It takes courage to start those kinds of conversations.
Yes.
And yet sometimes it can be the difference between a lonelier life and a more fulfilling life. And you deserve to navigate those conversations to get to the other side if you can.
Wow. I wish we had more time to dive into so much more. Everyone who's listening, please go look up Jean and all the work that she's doing. It's really great stuff. It's a great way to get started and to just bring more sex positivity into your life. Thanks for joining me, and until next time. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. If you want to see more, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so that we end up in your feed. If you got something out of this personally that was helpful to you, also please leave a comment below. I love hearing the feedback about what's working and what's not. That's what makes this show better. And until next time, love you more, and we'll see you then.